Hello, Project Blank audience. Welcome to the artist spotlight number. Which one are you? I think you're like six, I think. I don't know. Time counting doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters.
What are numbers? What are days? What are numbers?
What is now, even? With me today is the extra wonderful and explosive Anna Chiaretta Lavatelli. Hello!
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
It's really great to connect with people in these strange times.
Yeah, I'll take it however I can get it.
Exactly.
So tell us, get us started. So tell me, I am the stand-in for the audience. So tell me who you are. Tell us who you
Okay.
are. Where are you from? Where you are. Uh,
Certainly. Well, it's not an easy one right now for me. I am Anna Chiaretta Lavatelli. I work in video, film, and installation and whatever writing now has lately been my thing because times are changing. I have I'm sort of like my background is Buffalo, New York. Buffalo is really where I think I had my formative years as a maker, working with the media studies program at University of Buffalo and all those amazing, talented, brilliant weirdos. And from there, I found my way to San Diego, which is my other core formative moment in my life, where I studied at UC San Diego, met you, and met a million other brilliant, talented people.
Super weirdos.
Yeah.
It was a good time. So where
But
are you
so
now? You're clearly in a void of some kind.
I'm in a void. I'm nomadic. So a year ago, I decided to really commit to my practice and leave my full-time job in Chicago, where I was the last 5 years. And so I was in Mexico City for a year, and it was amazing. And I really got to immerse myself in culture and research and thinking about ways of seeing from different cultural perspectives, because there was just so much. I hadn't lived in a foreign country before, and I had experienced lots of different cultures and I felt like, oh, no big deal. But it was the nuances of little details in the way people saw the world and operated and related with space and time, that I had experienced within the US, moving around a lot and experienced traveling, but never in the way that I had in Mexico City, because Mexico's not that different from the US yet. It's a completely different reality. But then COVID happened. And
Yeah.
they started talking about closing the border, and I thought of all my family in the United States, and with so much unknown back in March, and Italy appearing like one of the scariest things I've seen in my life, I felt like it was important to get on the north side of the border, to be able to get to my family if something terrible were to happen. And I miss Mexico a lot. That's where I was supposed to
Really?
be. Yeah, it's like that was becoming my home, and now I'm here, and I can't imagine going back for I don't know how long
However
this will have. So
long.
somehow I ended up in North Carolina. I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina.
What?
It doesn't. I've never been to Wilmington before.
I love your decision making. You're like, I'm gonna just turn the globe and boom.
Well, so the situation was okay, there's this pandemic. There was a state of emergency. We were told as expats to get back in the country. So I bought a plane ticket. Oh, well, so I was trying to figure out, where do I buy a plane ticket to? I don't have a place to
Yeah.
go. But my sister's a nurse,
Yeah.
and she's in New Jersey, where there's a lot of cases. And then my parents are older. And I figured in Mexico, we didn't behave as though there was a pandemic this whole
Right.
time. And
Right.
so that was the other thing. It was a shock for me to understand there was something major happening. Because I could see that it was bad and I needed to go back, but I also couldn't I was still going out to restaurants and hanging out with friends. It couldn't wrap my head around it. And then a filmmaker I was starting a project with in Mexico City, had gone back to the States already for a job and was like, look, I'm not coming back. We were starting to do interviews of women who had suffered violence, documentation around the women's movement in Mexico, which is explosive right now.
Yeah, it's major.
Amazing march, most beautiful march I've ever been to, in Mexico City on March 8th. And then 12 days later, I was on a plane to Wilmington.
Shut it down.
Where she, so there's a property here that is, they usually have artist residencies and filmmaker residencies, which were all canceled. And so I was able to stay in one of the houses that's usually for residencies. So I'm a coronavirus in resident.
That's like very fortuitous, though. That's kind of that seems like a little like magic that you landed in a spot that seems kind of protected. It's so strange.
It's magical. I feel so fortunate. It like is crazy. There's only 66 cases in this county.
Really?
The beach is 15 minutes away. Not that we've gone because it's been on lockdown, but we're like, maybe we can go to
yes. Don't.
So I was able to quarantine and I only got a little bit sick. I think it was just adjusting to the air.
Yeah.
But it was the most bizarre flight of my life. It made it very real, very instantly.
Yeah. Well, what was that like? I mean, were you allowed to separate on the plane, or were you pretty much packed like sardines?
There was nobody there was 10 people on my first flight and 5 people on my second flight. There was nobody. The airport was empty. It was just staff outside of like 10 other passengers I saw, like literally crossing the airport from one terminal to the other in DC. And I was just like, I had full shock, like walking through the airport in DC because it was DC. So I had just seen the Capitol landing and it felt like a horror movie. And then I'm walking through and I hadn't seen any news media this whole time, right? I had been reading paper. That's how I consume my news in Mexico. I just read the paper. And so to see all those, because they have hundreds of TVs in the airport, it's media overload.
Right.
And they all were like, death toll in New York and Corona. And it was like a horror movie. And I lost my shit so hard in the airport because it was zombie apocalypse. It felt like I was living inside a zombie apocalypse, minus the zombies, so a little less exciting.
A little less.
But really, it made me really, I don't know, I think it triggered something in my head so that by the time I got here, I couldn't imagine myself working on my edit of the march, the Women's March. I couldn't focus on anything. All I wanted to do was consume media because the media looked so familiar and so foreign at the same. It looked like it was of another world.
Yeah. But then you can't, like, there comes a point, there's a limit, like I can't, I had to put myself on a news diet. I certainly cannot and have not watched any of the president's conferences. That is a recipe for sadness. Makes me sad and angry and just, is unbelievable. Just so surreal. That I just can't, I can't anymore. And so I have to choose better things to inject in my eyeballs other than disinfectant and presidents.
Yeah, no. I watched one and I almost broke my laptop. And so I cut myself off. So I don't watch any moving image news anymore. Yeah. I focus on like snippets and clippets. And I actually, TikTok is my new addiction. But also like live
adult human lady super into TikTok.
Yeah. I try to consume my news like reprocessed and parodied through TikTok.
Great.
It just, it's like adding a giant cup of milk to over strong coffee. You're like, oh, I could kind of drink this now. It doesn't taste great,
but it's palatable. It's palatable at the very least.
Yeah. But that, and then I've also been really fascinated by how live, I mean, most of it's not live anymore, but how live television has transformed, and that like this experience we're having is like a normalized mainstream like television
Yeah.
is very
Yeah.
strange.
I feel like I had a moment where I realized that I was used to it. And I was just like, oh God. Then there was another little like tailspin for me. It's like this is it. I think I'm okay. I've acclimated this new mediated engagement with everything. So it's that's another like surreal dart that hit me, and it was like
Totally.
this week I realized that all right, this is my life.
Literally putting on makeup because I was like, ooh, an opportunity, a reason to put on makeup. And I saw this perfume in my purse and I didn't know what it was for a second. Because I was just, I haven't needed to smell nice for anyone in so long. I'm still showering, but it's like, I mean, the
No,
relationship
you're not. No,
to
you're
objects and images
not.
are like,
Yeah.
it's really, I mean, yeah, it's bizarre. I'm fascinated by this. Like,
I mean, you are endlessly fascinated by the relationship between objects and images anyway, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. That's been my shit, and
This
now it's
is your
getting
life.
weird.
Now
Yeah,
it's everyone's life. We have to now all of us confront these questions of like, what do I consume? Why do I consume it? Now I think everybody's starting to ask these questions, which
maybe
is
I'm the coronavirus. No.
no, no, no. You're the solution
Yeah, yeah.
because
No,
you can filter through the shit and like come up with
right.
this like some wonderful brilliant thing, you know.
Well, and it's yeah, it's interesting because media studies is actually just, in the way that there used to be like technology or digital departments in museums, and it's like, no, actually everyone needs to be fluent in digital technology. It's like I think the same, just like
Yeah,
we all need to understand like the basics of code and the
yeah,
basics of media works just to
yeah.
be a
Function. Yeah.
functional human beings.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh man. Okay, so we're going to talk more about COVID later. But first,
Pause. COVID pause.
hang on. We could talk about this for hours because I
I
have
know.
so many feelings.
Don't we all?
I seem to
It's
I seem to feel all my feelings at the same time, which like vacillates between like euphoria, slappiness, and like totally like the burden of the world is upon me.
right. Well, okay.
So
I'm gonna still down the wall then because that's breaking down the wall, and we're gonna just calm down with the starry landscape.
oh, Anna, that's nice. This is
This
nice.
is the southern hemisphere Milky Way. It doesn't read that well on Zoom, but it's it's a darker.
Actually, it's the southern hemisphere, so
Just
so just putting that
fly.
out there. Yeah. Uh, so let's talk about the things that you make and the way that you actually do interrogate images
Yeah.
and media and your practice as a video artist. It is that throughout all of it, it is vast. Your body of work.
All over the map.
Yeah, your body of work.
Glad.
Yeah, yes. That it like it's, but there's a through line through all of it, and one is obviously your sense of humor, and there's even in things that are very sincere and honest, there's like a little bit of a dark wryness to it, your little sass. A little Chiaretta Lavatelli sass. Um, so talk about both of your parents are also creators, right? They're both
Mm-hmm.
artists themselves, and so growing up in that household, like how do you, when you're surrounded by two creative forces, how do you find your own voice, and how was that even nurtured?
Ooh, wow. Okay. Ooh,
Just thought of
okay.
that.
Just gonna
So
just gonna not get too personal. This is a public conversation. No, no. So yeah, I was born in Dallas, and both of my parents are painters. Very different style. Polly Little and Mark Lavatelli, and I my earliest childhood memories are like playing inside galleries, like lots of adults with wine in their hands, chit chatting and like running around, sort of like just goofing off inside art galleries. And so I think I had this really kind of irreverent relationship to art. Like it was just the thing that was always around. And I don't think I actually really appreciated it. I didn't understand that it was something, you know, like I was just like the cool weird kid in school from my for my nerd friends. I mean, I wasn't cool to the cool kids.
You're
but
not cool, to be clear.
my nerd friends, I was the cool one because my house was weird and you could do crazy, like they would give us like a ton of paint and let us like go bananas, and they're like, your parents are great, like we can like build a crazy giant paper mache, you know, sculpture. And
but that's like the childhood relationship development. It's like what do you bring to the table? Like what can I mess with? Like we had the pool, and so that was what I was good for, and all of my friends' relationships, you know.
Right. Like everybody's good for something. Oh, that and nudity, because there was always like, you know, sculptures or of nude body, and people would be like, oh, that's a penis, and I'm like, that's art,
guys.
Excuse me, guys. Like imagine, you know, 7-year-olds, you know, telling, excuse me, that is not offensive. That is art.
It's
and
art.
They're like, but so I think I had this very casual relationship to all of it. But that, where was I going with that? It's sort of like that. Made me sort of step away from it. It's like one of the things that I think I might be notorious for is like being a really neurotic and controlling and organized, systematic person, but also like a total fucking anarchist. And I'm in internal conflict with myself for this. And I think the systematic controlling stuff is because there were no rules growing up. And I think as a kid, I was like, I just need like a little bit of structure. What are my expectations? What's going to happen? And I sort of found my way away from creative work, like started business school. I was like, first went to college.
I like that. It's your active rebellion. Yeah.
I'm going into fashion merchandising management. Lasted a semester, and I was making video art at SVA. For like, you know, in night classes, and I was like, okay, I'll go back to Buffalo, do the media studies program, and really fell in love with photography and film. And it became something that was so different from painting because it was a systematic, there were rules, there were chemicals, there were ratios, there were rules that I could follow. And then once I understood those systems, I could break them. And so I got really into experimental process and hand processing and making my own emulsions and really getting dirty with it, because it was like, how do I learn the maximum capabilities of this technology and then undermine it? And I think that that sort of has been my process throughout, like as I started messing with video and really can't afford film.
Right?
Film's expensive, and I think I don't have an idea solid enough to apply for a grant, so I'm just going to start messing with video. And then I fell in love with video because it was a whole other system of rules that can be broken, but in a whole other plethora of ways. And so I enjoy that. Like I also enjoy looking at like, because I was making documentary films the last 8 years, for museums, it was like, okay, I want to learn everything about methodologies of documentary film production and all of the levels, because I realized, you know, people were passing off really low quality stuff, but then you'd see museums doing really beautiful broadcast quality, full-on documentaries, and sort of understanding what is that range, like what is that spectrum of production, and then how do you manipulate it? How do you like fuck the patriarchy and start over and make a new hierarchy or a non-hierarchical system of filmmaking. So that stemmed from my parents in rebellion.
I know, I love that.
And it ended with smashing the patriarchy. It means nothing. It means nothing about my. Has no relation to my upbringing.
No, of course not. Nothing ever does. I want to talk a little bit about the Pink Room.
Oh yeah.
You know, that little nugget of beauty. This little chestnut.
That old room.
That old room. That So this was your master's thesis show at UCSD. Can you describe it a little bit, and maybe we can like put in a little clip from it if you're willing to
Oh
share.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'll send you a Vimeo link.
Great. So tell us a little bit about what is the Pink Room? Where did it come from? What sorts of systems are you destroying in this? And yeah, so describe it a
Yeah.
little bit for us.
Yeah. So up until San Diego, I had always used myself in my work. Classic. We joke that it's a classic Buffalo artist thing,
Really?
because I don't think it's hard to imagine anyone who didn't use themselves in their work in Buffalo. It
Yeah.
was a very, I don't know what was what was in the water, but we were all really interested in analyzing performance and identity through our own bodies. And I don't know. I mean, you do that as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think not
It's
just
so,
because I'm a narcissist. I mean, that's part of it. This is a yes and
yes,
situation.
and yes, and
Yeah, I don't know. I think exploring identity and just trying to like piece together like for me that there's like clear chapters in my own life and my own development
Mhm.
as a person, and I think we all can kind of feel that. We can feel like, okay, so from this time to this time when I lived in South Texas in a border city, what was that life like, and what did that imprint on me? And then from this
Mhm.
time to this time I lived in fucking Las Vegas as a teenager and a college student, which screwed me up in so many ways.
It's
Like
amazing.
I needed to deal, you know? And like that was my way of dealing with that. Like what did I get from that? What did I like
Right.
what kind of a person did it make me? It made me a horrible person for a long time, and then confronting that battle, that demon. So yeah, so I'm just like trying to like it's therapy for me.
Right.
So what is it for you? Why would you use yourself in your Buffalo self in
It
work?
was it was what I had, and it's funny because I don't think I was that smart back then, but I was
Probably
in the
not.
process of getting smarter.
Yeah.
But thinking about it in context of the way I think about myself and my work now, like even when I'm not in it, is
Hmm.
that um, everything I'm doing is a way of documenting my experience of the world
Right.
through my presence in the world. And so that's through the way I see it, hear it, feel it, taste it. And I'm not doing anyone any service by pretending to take on another role unless I'm taking on that role through myself. I don't know if I'm saying that right,
Well, you
but it's
are.
sort of like
Yeah,
if
and
I'm
it's
curious
also
about someone else's experience, it's like, okay, I'm gonna try and do my best to be that and see
yeah.
what that feels like. But I'm going to acknowledge that it's me. So I'm just going to use myself in my work because
Right.
I'm not that person and I'm not going to be able to see with their eyes. And so I think
Right.
it was a way of for me to explore what moving image meant with a body. And then in San Diego, I was like, well, grad school, next level. There's a little bit of grant money. I should start working with actors. Like I'm legit now. I don't know what like I needed
Grad
that.
school is legit.
Yeah, like I don't know. Getting into grad school for me was sort of like, okay, you can start like asking people to do stuff for you because I've always had a hard time asking for help. I
For
think that's the
sure.
other reason.
Yeah.
So I started. I just would put these like casting calls on Craigslist, not realizing how creepy that is, like in context of now. Like looking
Yeah.
for teenage girls on
Yeah.
Craigslist.
I'm sure there's like a more legit way to go about that.
Oh yeah, like
But
working with a casting director or like an acting school.
no,
But
no, no,
no,
no.
I just
Craigslist
threw ads
sad.
on Craigslist,
Sure.
and because I realized, I think I was also kind of semi-aware of how demented that I could come off. I so like graduate student research, please bring a parent with you. And so these girls came with their parents, and this was sort of like probably a year in, or like a good way into my first year of messing around. And I had them read excerpts of Joan Didion dialogue from Play It As It Lays. And it was creepy.
Yeah, dude, you're weird. Don't do that.
But I loved it. And so I cut it all together. I was thinking it was just me trying to understand what it meant to work with an actor. It was like, this is just me researching how to work with young actors. Like I'm being, I'm a grad student. This is, study. And hopefully this is practice for them. I'm going to do my best to direct. I don't know what I'm doing. It was very explicit and open. And the parents were always there. And they were really like stage mommy. And so it was like, whew, like that was a whole other level for me.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah, it was like just a grad student. This isn't your big break.
Yeah.
But it helped me to really, and it was so interesting because I had girls from working with girls from the age of like 13, 14 to like 18. Mm-hmm. And it was so beautiful and brilliant to see a confident 13-year-old act across a 17-year-old who is really awkward, or vice versa, and the way in which they carried each other a little bit through the scene. Like it was like there was this weird like unspoken sisterhood, but also an unspoken competition, and you could feel this like tension. And I knew I was onto something, and that because it was helping me to understand my own awkwardness, because I just like never grew up. I'm like, I'm still a teenager, like nervous and awkward right now. Yeah. And so that just led to more and more experiments. I did a project called As It Lays, and it was really weird and really creepy. And everybody reacted in this very like, whoa, what are you doing way? And I was like, okay, I gotta take this to the next level. What is the next level of really unpacking why this makes us so uncomfortable? So I invited a bunch of the girls back, and then some other girls to do a casting call. And I was looking for 2 girls to play sort of best friends inside this pink room. And one of the girls came back, and she ended up showing up the same day as this girl who turned out to be her friend, Izzy and Alexis. They were both 15. They're busy in their college prep. They were at what is that school, Bishop's? And so they were they're in a very privileged situation, but you could also feel that they were pushing themselves in this intense way. They were already talking about where they're gonna go. And she was like, I'm going to Brown. And I was like, you're 15. How do you know you're going to Brown?
Yeah. I teach a bunch of Bishop students. They are like driven, and they are pushed really, really, really hard by just academically at that school in general. It's competitive and tough. And so, every last one of them that I know is just like, Stanford is my safety. And I'm just like, could you go to like a state school? I don't know. Like, no, that's failure. Yeah, it's hard. They're hardcore.
It's really hardcore. And it was a level of pushing oneself that I had never experienced, or being pushed I had never experienced either.
Right.
And so it was really foreign to me and very strange. And so I cast these 2 girls. And so the first project was I built this 3-walled room, 4th wall open, so I could record, and I had them paint the room pink. I was like, just wear like, jeans, white t-shirt, something really basic, no writing, it's just like your generic American girl painting your bedroom pink. And they showed up in the shortest jean shorts and these like, cute little white t-shirts. And I was like, oh my God. And then I'm like, whatever, I'm going to record it. I just won't show anyone. And watch and try and like figure out what the hell am I going to do from here, because it was so uncomfortable, and it made me so uncomfortable because I was like, I'm here to try and de-objectify you and make you a real being that people understand has, is in this tension between innocence and sexuality, and trying to figure out your power, and knowing that your sexuality is your source of power. And they had so much fun painting the room pink, and it was really like this beautiful sisterhood bonding, but it was like a sexy video. I was like, okay, into the files. Never gonna look at that again. But okay, so how do I sort of let them be youthful again? How do I let them have control of their sexuality in this space? And so jeans only, like long jeans going forward, kids. But so we did these series of like these floor exercises where they were just doing these choreographies, slinking around the floor like a bored teenager laying on the floor of a room. And then we would do an exercise where I would bring in a heap of pink garbage from Target and Walmart, pink food, pink tools, pink everything. And just like, I would put it in a heap and I'd be like, okay, go nuts. And so we did several of these exercises over 6 months. And then I worked with a choreographer, Alicia. And so we became this mirror where she was sort of re-choreographing things I had already done. And it was this weird folding and folding and folding, but it was like these two women in their 30s observing and watching and trying to find the right balance of presence with these two girls. And then in the end, they destroyed the room. I let them go at it with sledgehammers and crowbars, and they were like, oh my God, I've never seen so much violence. It was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, do you think the girls kind of got what was going on?
Absolutely. It took them, I think, like 3 months, but by our last shoot, it was like incredibly somber. It was meditative, and because we spent hours in there in that pink room. And Izzy, I wish I had the book. I published the thesis, and Izzy wrote this beautiful 1-page piece about the pink room where she talked about it being a place of meditation and a place of solace, a place of play, and a place of safety, but also a place that needed to sort of be destroyed. It was just like she was so conscious of this pink room became a representation of their innocence, and they were all, by the end of it, getting ready for their last year of school before going to college and being adults in the real world. And adults. So, yeah, adults, like me.
Yeah.
But it was this really, and I think the choreographer wrote a really nice piece as well. And it was just all the writing that people did around it really moved me, because I felt every time I go into a project when I'm working with other people, I'm like, well, this is my like I'll write a proposal and I won't show it to anyone.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back and read the proposal. I'm like, oh shit, we did that.
Yeah, you didn't think that it had changed? Like what you had intended is what had come out?
Going back, not knowing, because I went in with sort of structural fragments, but when I went back to my notebooks like a year later, when I went to re-edit the thesis to finalize the book, it was like, oh wow, I had already conceptualized the pink room a year prior. And it was just, I needed to go through all these weird little cycles of experimentation and reperformance to hone in on how to visually represent this little tickle I had in the back of my head 2 years prior.
So then what is the pink room? What is it to you? So what do you think was your intention to come across?
I wanted to sort of create a memory, a sort of a placeless, timeless memory of that space of being so beautiful and adult and a sexual body, but simultaneously completely child and innocent, but in a situation where they were not removed of their power. They weren't selling themselves. They weren't. And so actually the way it was installed, the final video, there was a girl who looked a lot like Izzy, sitting in a chair watching everybody who watched the video. And her job was to glare down everyone watching, just in case somebody felt turned on by them or attracted. She was there to say, you do not have permission to own these girls. They get to be these sort of magical, witches, spirit guides, whatever they sort of like this ghost-like memory of a sort of powerful moment that is very fleeting. When you have the power of your sexuality and you can giggle and flirt and control everyone, but also not even understand exactly how or why, because sex is still a little outside of your
vocabulary.
And I think that that's such an interesting space of power.
I felt when I saw it, I felt sadness. I felt this like
It's
overwhelming. It was just like this somber, this because there's gestures that are being done, like they're just like brushing each other's hair, and you know that to me is the image that still stays with me. That this like this performative gesture of kindness from two besties, you know,
and it in a
and
way,
it
yeah,
just is like
it's an
so good.
it's an altar in a way also to girlhood friendship
Yeah,
that is systematically robbed of
yeah,
us as we
yeah,
age, because women are forced into competition with each other, women are forced into, so it's only in girlhood that you get to have this ridiculously pure bond.
right, right. That is just like so mutual, this mutually
Hmm.
beneficial, right? And it causes lots of sadness and joy, and it's like this really great, complicated but simple relationship. It's like, yeah, it's so beautiful.
It's
I love it.
you know, to take it to a level like up, this artist who was in the studio next door to my parents in Dallas, his son was applying to UCSD, and they did a campus visit, and so they happened to be in town when my thesis was up, and so he got to come see it. We hadn't seen each other. He was Uncle Gene, like
Aw.
it was family. We would go over there and he would show us how to do stuff with ceramics, and he came out of the exhibition and he was just wide-eyed, like, you know, this little kid he knew. It was like, you know, I was 5 running around
Yeah.
me, and he's like, this is just so impressive and amazing. I can't believe it. It's so wild. It's you and Zoe. Zoe's my sister. Because it
Aw.
was this blonde brunette
Yeah.
girl, and I was like, oh, I was subconsciously channeling some very deep sisterhood stuff. But it was so it had never crossed my mind. And for
Really?
him, it was just completely obvious.
Yeah.
And I think it was so important for me to hear that, because that controlling on him, it's like, I need to understand exactly what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and what everything signifies.
Yeah.
But also to trust yourself, because you
Yeah.
have, once again, this like unique image from your experience of life that projects that signifier in a way that's so true to you, but
Yeah.
that trueness reads even if you don't know my sister.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's I think like the sort of the if there's anybody that is like ever even just considering going into a creative practice, I think when you start off, you like try on all these different coats, right? You try on,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I'm this style, maybe I'm this style, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, and it always everybody everybody when you go back to it and they finally find their voice, it's always something that was like there 20 years ago that
Deep in
you
the
are
woods.
rejecting. Like, no, I can't. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this thing because this is
Yeah.
what is popular, or this is cool, and you know, and it always has to come back to like the
Oh,
simplest thing. It's just
and
sisterhood. Yeah, yeah.
trusting these weird instincts that you don't know where they, like, I don't need to be smart. That's fine. We don't need to be smart. It's not like, I mean, what, you're going to be excited if somebody comes out of your exhibition, they're like, Deleuze, Foucault.
Yeah, like gross. Shut up.
Like, if somebody comes out and they're wet-eyed, like, oh my God,
Oh, something happened.
that was something, you know? That did
Yeah,
something. And I
yeah.
think that, yeah, it's so hard to trust that because we're so afraid of ourselves.
So talk about, let's maybe talk a little bit about what you're doing now these days. So you're working on some eyeballs for a
Yeah, the
project,
eyes.
like,
Yeah.
which is creepy and weird, man. But
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I think it's getting back to my like experimental roots, you
Yeah.
know? I'm doing so much documentary and, you know, really figurative, literal stuff. I was like, you know what? I just got these weird images that I got to process. I got to move through them. I need to send you the lens filter. Did I send it?
Yeah, you sent me the Snapchat, but girl, I don't use Snapchat. I
Sorry. You can use it on Snap Camera, which is the desktop app, if you just want to play with
don't.
it.
Okay, great. I will.
Yeah.
She
So
has a
yeah,
Snapchat filter. Go download it. It's awesome.
yeah.
I'll send you a link.
I think it's called Eyes V1, assuming that there would be a V2.
Right, right, right.
Because I'm
Yeah.
still learning the technology. But I think that's been the thing that I've been excited is just to mess around, just
Yeah.
like be irreverent and mess around because I feel like I really took a long pause while I was doing all the documentary work from the really indulgent creative process outside of being the director of photography for Ashes, Candy Ego.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a whole lot of time for creative work.
Right.
So I think it's been this, using the piece Harawi. I think music is such a good place to go when you're sort of trying to move yourself into or through an image or an idea. And so I was really thrilled when we got in touch and got to start talking about Harawi, which funny enough, I knew the piece. I'm not
Oh.
super well read on my contemporary music,
Hmm.
but I was thrilled that I was familiar with it. And it was just like, I mean, it's such a metal piece. It was like,
But it's
yes, I
also
mean,
like so not contemporary though, right? Like I get all
yeah.
icky about the word contemporary because I think in the music world it just means everything after like 1930, and that was 100 years ago, you know.
Same thing in art for that matter, right?
Like it's not contemporary. It's not my contemporary, you know.
Right.
But it's like, but that I think is what I'm not to denigrate anything that is older than yesterday, but
Yeah.
but I
Different
think
moment.
it's a different moment, and but it's also like it's still 100% still relevant. The way that the composer is diving into this myth of the Incan, not even Incan. It's all like Peruvian, Andean mythology.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that using this Quechua language that it is so onomatopoetic, is that's even a word. I keep using it like it's a word, so it's going to be a word.
It's a word. You're making a word.
Great,
It's
great. Okay, cool. And it is like so like ripe with like color and just these images that make no sense. That it is so evocative of this thing that just is like a feeling, right? You kind of have this feeling of a jungle and of this place that maybe didn't exist, you know? So it's like the imagination can just go wild. You know?
and yeah, and it's totally surreal. It's
Totally surreal.
totally out there. And so when I was thinking about surrealist imagery, and then listening to the piece and getting into the Peruvian history via my what I had already been looking at with Mexico, is
Mm.
like, I keep talking about eyes and seeing our, the ways in which we see our world. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, let's just start out with this field of eyes, in the way that the stars are the eyes looking down on us,
Hmm.
just like in the piece, and create this landscape of eyes as a sort of kickoff point. And so I think it's a really good starting point for thinking about what it means to work with video, uh, both in a sort of experimental surreal way, but also experientially, so that it becomes an environment as opposed to a thing you watch,
Right.
which is exciting right now in context of like having to consume so much content via a
Right.
screen. It's like,
Right.
how does the video recede? How does the video just become a space that we can, like outer space that we can be in?
Look at all those eyes behind you.
Yeah.
But
And
I
so
think that's, yeah, I think you're, but like, not to, stop your train of thought, but
yeah.
also like for me, in putting this whole concert series together, which in effect this is what Project Blank is. It is a concert series, but it's like we're gonna, fill in the blank each time. It's gonna be a mishmash of a whole bunch of different things,
Yeah.
and I always sort of felt that like that the music world and the visual art world they are so enmeshed, but we are kept in
Yeah.
our separate institutions,
Yeah.
and we have our different ways, our different places that we can show these things. I can show music in this spot. I can show a video piece here, but I think that But then it also kind of gets into the problem of like, okay, so if you just ask a visual artist to like, you know, make a thing for this piece of sound, then are they going to be in competition with each other? Like how do these mediums communicate and really kind of create the fuller experience, the fuller story, and express like meaning, you know, and actually have it make sense and not be like, oh, that's a pretty picture, oh, that's a cool sound, you know, like you have to be incommunicado.
Right, and this idea of being each stimulating, because I feel like I've seen so much, like, I mean, let's see, I worked at the Guggenheim so long ago now. It was like 15 years ago. I don't like these numbers. They don't add up to an age that I am. But I remember, like, I mean, they had this series. I worked in the theater, and they had this, you know, they had, you know, all these new music series and new theater series, and like the way in which all these people were using video, but it was like, it always felt decorative to me. And it
or like just, afterthought.
Yeah, like, oh, we need like something.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I mean, even when it was fully interactive and really incredibly executed and beautiful, I was still like, well, I mean, did that really need to be video?
Right.
Like, why? I think it just thought it looked cool. And so, you know, I love the challenge, you know, because it's like, you know, okay, it's been 15 years apparently, since I started seeing this really take over, and we've been evolving, and there's a lot of really interesting video stuff happening on the stage and in other spaces, and I mean, crazy projects, but and some of them are good, and some of them are interesting, and some of them are not. And it's I love this sort of like, okay, how do we sort of really force ourselves to be in dialogue and to sort of intellectualize what our work, and push each other in a fun way, because especially with this piece, it's gonna be so, I'm so excited. It's so intensely visual.
It is. It was like screaming. It's screaming for something more. I mean, the sound world itself is already pretty in your face and athletic, you know, and it is like insanely virtuosic. Not to like, you know, toot my own whatever, but that shit's hard. It's a really hard piece of music, but it's like, but every time I come to a really difficult piece, which it happens often, lots of pieces are hard, but not lots of pieces are satisfying in this way. And this piece, I think, is incredibly satisfying, and I think I'm super excited to continue the collaboration on this work, as we're working to present it on next season as a fully realized thing. So stay tuned, everyone. So yeah.
And I just have to toot your horn. I have to say, like, the thing that I loved so much about the rehearsal is it's not that you make it look easy, nor do you make, you know, it's just like you make it look badass. It's like, you know, you're like, because you're just like, we were all grabbing each other's hands at one point, like, what the shit? Like, and that's what I whispered to Joe. I was like, hey, this is so metal.
It is really metal. It's super metal, I gotta say. And every singer, every pianist who's like picked that thing up has, I think, the exact same experience with it, where we're like, God, this is really good. This is good.
And I mean, you and Brendan with it, it's so cool. I mean, because he was tickled. He was like, I'm so excited to play this because I don't even have to think about holding back with Leslie.
No, just let it rip.
She's gonna just like,
give me the full stick on the piano.
Yeah, it's just
Let's
like
do
both of you just like, it was awesome. It got me all excited.
So we're gonna make more, is what we're saying.
We're gonna do it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this has been long enough. I think we've had enough of you, and mostly enough of me. I've had enough of me. All right. Well, thank you, Anna, for talking about pink, the color pink, and sisterhood, and metal. The three basic
Thank
elements.
you. Oh, thank you so much. It's been so much fun.
I love you. All right. Bye.